Right, so Benjamin Netanyahu promised to nobble Iran's nuclear program. Instead, he may have accidentally handed them the perfect excuse to double down. The smoke has now cleared over those three nuclear sites of Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan. Iran isn't licking its wounds, it's tightening its lab coats again, recalibrating centrifuges and preparing to restart its research from the stockpiles of enriched uranium they very much still have, as if nothing at all has happened. What Netanyahu and Trump triumphantly branded as historic victory is fast revealing itself to be a complete and utter failure, an historic failure. The so-called obliteration of Iran's nuclear capacity has turned out to be little more than a public relations stunt, with Iran's program still intact, its facilities apparently operational, and its scientists calmly going back to work. If this was meant to be Israel's knockout punch, then Iran just got up, dusted itself off, and is very much ready for round two if needs be, smirking all the while as their nuclear program prepares to restart imminently. Netanyahu failed. The whole world knows he failed, and Israel has been left looking every bit as weak as it truly is. Absolutely nothing without US protection. More isolated than it was before as more people turn against the Zionist colonial project, and it hasn't come soon enough. Right, so Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to make history, and you can argue he's done that, though not in the way he'll want to be remembered, of course. The guy who started a fight with Iran and got his backside handed to him on a plate, even with US support. Not only will he be remembered for the genocide of Gaza, but he's now going to become a cautionary tale too. The dust is now settling on one of the most ill-conceived military gambits in recent history, committed because more war is all Netanyahu can do to stay in power now, it seems. Israel's unprovoked attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, touted by Netanyahu and Donald Trump as a decisive strike to eliminate Iran's nuclear ambitions, the operation has spectacularly failed. The reality, as confirmed by leaked US intelligence and public statements by Iran, is that Israel achieved none of their strategic aims, neither ending Iran's nuclear ambitions nor delivering regime change. Iran's nuclear program is not only intact, it's already ramping up again. Netanyahu declared a historic victory. But within days, Iranian officials were already back at Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan inspecting and reassessing and restarting enrichment protocols. The Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, the IAEA, have confirmed what the world had already been suspecting, that the nuclear program very much could and would continue pretty much uninterrupted. Iran didn't just survive the attacks, it was already prepared for them. Long before the first Israeli drone took off for those three sites, Iran had contingency plans already put in place, already underway. Sensitive equipment had been relocated, critical materials had been moved, and safety protocols activated. The result was no radiation leaks, no catastrophic damage, no strategic loss. According to leaked US intelligence obtained after the strike, Iran's nuclear infrastructure remains largely intact, with only minor delays estimated, a couple of months at most. Rather than crippling Iran, the attacks have galvanized its leadership and scientific community instead. Iran has openly declared its intention to continue and expand its nuclear program. The IAEA has stated that the country's nuclear development is too deeply entrenched in its scientific and technological infrastructure to be dismantled by external aggression. Iran has emphasized that this program is part of its sovereign rights under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, a treaty it continues to honor, unlike Israel, who have always refused to sign it. In a scathing rebuke, Iranian officials accused the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, of complicity with Israel, suggesting the agency failed to protect Iran's rights as a signatory of the NPT. There's a good argument for that. Tehran insists the IAEA turned a blind eye as Israel and the US targeted civilian nuclear infrastructure in violation of international norms. Even IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi has warned that these attacks could risk the collapse of the NPT itself, but it's happened on your watch, sunshine, hasn't it? Iran's accusations strike at the heart of the global nuclear order. If a nation complying with the NPT can be attacked with impunity, then the entire system loses credibility, and somebody has to answer to that. The precedent set by Israel and the US could drive other nations to withdraw from the treaty altogether, viewing compliance with it as a vulnerability, or just plain pointless, rather than a path to maintaining peace and keeping control over nuclear threats in this world. Trump boasted that the joint US-Israeli strikes had obliterated Iran's nuclear sites, but no satellite imagery at all supports his claims. No radiation leaks occurred, and most damning of all, those US intelligence reports have contradicted him outright. The damage, officials admit, is superficial. Some above-ground infrastructure was hit, but centrifuges and enrichment stockpiles had already been moved. Even Vice President J.D. Vance, not usually the quickest mind in the room, let's say, has acknowledged the operation did not achieve its aims. In remarks to the Senate Intelligence Committee, Vance noted that we have not degraded Iran's nuclear capacity in any significant way. If this was a strategic victory, it is one only in rhetoric. He'd also said as much to Fox News. J.D. Vance admits Iran's uranium most likely survived US strikes. It's still there. US Vice President J.D. Vance has conceded that Iran's stockpile of near weapons-grade uranium may remain intact despite a wave of US airstrikes targeting key nuclear sites. The Guardian reports. In an interview with Fox News, Vance dismissed concerns about the uranium's location, instead questioning Iran's ability to weaponize the material. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, has not been granted access to Iranian facilities since the war began, and its chief, Rafael Grossi, confirms the possibility that the stockpile, estimated at 400 kilograms and previously housed in Isfahan, was moved prior to the strikes. The revelation has sparked fresh doubts about the efficacy of the US campaign. So even Vance is questioning Iran's ability to weaponize the material, but that was what the strikes were all about, wasn't it? It's the elephant in the room. You just said the quiet bit out loud. Wouldn't be the first time, would it? Iran's skepticism of the recent ceasefire is well-founded. Israeli forces reportedly launched 3 more attacks after the truce was announced. Iran has called these violations a transparent attempt to sabotage the peace process that was only just starting to get underway. Many Iranian officials refused to call it a ceasefire at all, opting instead for a temporary pause, fully expecting Israel to strike again in the not-too-distant future. And this mistrust is not paranoia. It's history, isn't it? Israel's long record of ceasefire violations in Gaza and Lebanon most recently makes Iranian doubts entirely rational. Iranian military commanders have issued clear warnings to both Israel and the US that any further aggression will be met with force. The deterrent strategy now includes not only missiles, but cyber countermeasures as well, and also regional alliances. One of the most significant outcomes of this conflict is the collapse of a long-standing myth that Israel is militarily untouchable. Operation True Promise 3, Iran's code name for this latest batch of strikes, the True Promise series if you like, proved devastatingly effective. Iranian missiles penetrated Israeli air defences, struck military bases, and exposed deep vulnerabilities. The world saw a different Israel. Not the invincible force, anything but an Operation Lion's courage, but a state deeply dependent on US protection. The symbolism of this shift cannot be overstated, because for decades Israel has used its perceived invulnerability as both a deterrent and a diplomatic weapon, and now that aura is gone. And with it, Netanyahu's carefully curated image as the protector of the Jewish state will have taken another critical blow as well, getting more and more fed up and bored, frankly, with having to deal with matters in the Middle East. In addition to military setbacks, Israel's cyber warfare efforts against Iran flopped as well. Despite weeks of coordinated digital attacks that have been happening in the run-up to these latest strikes, Iran's financial sector remained operational. Iran's central bank confirmed that Israel failed to disrupt their banking systems despite attempts to do so. In an age where cyber warfare is often so much more damaging than missiles can be, Israel's failure to dent Iran's economic infrastructure in this way, that Iran's cyber security was more than a match for it, is another layer of strategic humiliation. Israel dedicated entire units of the IDF to cyber warfare, and they failed. Which is particularly embarrassing given Israel's reputation for cyber prowess. That Iran weathered both kinetic and digital assaults with minimal disruption speaks volumes about the robustness of its infrastructure and the overestimation of Israel's own capabilities, found woefully wanting. As Iran restarts its nuclear activities, Western media outlets have predictably shifted their narratives. Reports are now surfacing about Iran cracking down on alleged Mossad spies, with some accusing Tehran of using the war as an excuse for repression now by continuing to rout Mossad out from their nation, which is just the most bizarre and desperate attack line to take to try and save Israel some face. What weak-willed editor thought this was a good angle? It came from France 24, disappointingly. But given the scale of Israeli espionage efforts in the region, Iran's actions appear less like repression and more like national security cleanup long overdue. Indeed, countries under attack often tighten internal security. To frame this as exceptional, though, or unjust, is ridiculous. And it's hypocritical, especially when the US and its allies have all engaged in similar measures under far less threatening circumstances. Iran's domestic actions should be scrutinized, but not in isolation from the external threats that it faced. The real measure of victory in a conflict of this scale, though, is strategic endurance. Israel and the US sought to dismantle Iran's nuclear program and weaken its regime. They failed on both counts. Iran's regime remains intact. Its nuclear facilities are operational, all but. Its scientists are at work again. And its public, far from being demoralized, have been galvanized and unified by the attack, not divided. Every step Iran takes towards renewed uranium enrichment is a reminder of Netanyahu's failure. Every centrifuge that spins is an indictment of his decision to provoke a sovereign nation with a premeditated act of war. Every IAEA visit that verifies enrichment activity is a data point disproving Israel's claims of success. This operation has implications far beyond the Middle East. It sends a chilling message to countries that have trusted international treaties to protect their sovereign rights when they don't get applied to Israel, when Israel has made an exception of, and therefore those protections, those treaties are completely undermined. That's got to end. It encourages nuclear proliferation by showing that compliance invites attack while deterrence may prevent it. The assault also sets a dangerous precedent for future American administrations. By participating in what amounts to a preventive war, the US has further eroded its moral authority and emboldened its adversaries. The backlash may not be immediate, but it's sure to come. Trump has been significantly weakened by this in the eyes of the American public and his MAGA base, perhaps in the form of accelerated nuclear development elsewhere, since those treaties have been undermined, though I would hope not, or the quiet defection of countries from the NPT. Benjamin Netanyahu may have declared victory, but history is going to judge him very differently, as a failure and as a maniac. His unprovoked assault on Iran has achieved none of its aims. Iran's nuclear program survives, its sovereignty has been asserted, and its enemies exposed as aggressors. Netanyahu has failed on every single measure. The myth of Israeli invincibility has been shattered as a result of his own stupidity. The strategic balance of the region has therefore shifted, and for what? To protect him in his position of power, because that's all it's ever been about. For Netanyahu, the consequences are political as well as strategic. Already embattled at home, embattled in the courts, he now faces the fallout of an operation that not only failed, but absolutely humiliated him and his government, even if he won't admit it. When war is all he's really got now, and he can't even win at that here. The legacy he leaves behind now will be a deserved one, not being one of strength and deterrence, but of overreach, of greed, of self-servitude, of miscalculation, and of catastrophic failure. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about his abject failure and what led to it, please do check out this video recommendation here as your suggested next. Please do also hit like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.